Good evening, friends. I'm Mr. Narratory. If you're here, it means the day is done and the quiet has finally arrived. Tell me, what time is it where you are right now? And what's your favorite way to end the day? If these stories bring you peace, consider subscribing, liking, or sharing them with someone who needs a little calm. Now, let's begin. It started as something simple: a day too long, a sky too low, and a need for quiet that bookstores couldn't quite offer. That's how I ended up in the old library on the east side of town. I'd passed it many times. A tall stone building with soft green windows and a crooked lamp above the door that flickered even when it wasn't raining. Inside, it smelled of paper and patience, of things left unsaid. I wasn't looking for anything in particular that day, just somewhere to exist without needing to explain myself. I wandered between tall shelves, let my fingers trail over spines that felt more like breathing than binding. It was in a far corner, behind a heavy wooden desk and a staff-only sign half faded from sunlight, that I noticed the door half open, half forgotten. No one stopped me. No one looked up. The sign on the door said only, "Left things." Nothing more. Curious, and maybe a little tired, I stepped inside. It wasn't a large room, not dusty, not grand, just quiet, like the air was holding its breath out of respect for whatever lived there. The shelves were different here, lower, uneven, crowded, but instead of books, they held objects. A single glove, soft and navy blue, resting in a ceramic bowl, a paper crane folded from a receipt, a small scratched music box that clicked once when I touched it but didn't play, a child's drawing of a green cat wearing glasses. There were no labels, no explanations, just things left behind, or maybe left on purpose. I sat on the floor and let the room speak, not loudly, not even in full sentences, just feelings. Memories that weren't mine, but somehow knew how to sit beside me without asking for space. I picked up an old key with no tag and held it in my palm. It was warm, heavier than it looked. For a moment, I wondered what door it no longer opened, or if it ever had. I didn't take anything. That wasn't the point. I stayed there a long time that first day, not speaking, not searching, just listening. And when I finally stood to leave, I felt lighter, not because I'd found something, but because I'd been allowed to rest. The door stayed open behind me, like an old friend nodding goodbye. And though no one spoke as I passed the front desk, I felt something shift in the way the light followed me out. "You're welcome to return," it seemed to say. "You don't have to explain why." And something deep inside me whispered back, "Maybe I will." I went back 2 days later. Not out of habit, at least, not yet, but because something in me hadn't quite left the first time. That little room behind the desk had taken root somewhere beneath my ribs, and I found myself thinking about it in small, still moments, waiting for the kettle to boil, listening to the radiator tick at night, standing at crosswalks with nowhere urgent to be. The second visit felt different, though the room hadn't changed. The light still pooled gently across the floor like it was being careful not to wake anything. The air was cool, but kind. The objects were just as I remembered, still, quiet, waiting. But this time, one thing called to me, not loudly, not insistently, just steadily, as if it had been waiting for me to come back and notice it properly. It was a scarf, folded once and draped over the edge of a shelf like it had been placed there by careful hands. It wasn't particularly special in appearance's oft gray wool, slightly frayed at one end, but with a single thread of lavender running through it, thin and uneven, like it had been added by someone who wasn't quite sure how to sew, but tried anyway. I picked it up gently. The wool was worn but warm, familiar, the kind of warmth that reminded you of waiting rooms and winter mornings, and someone once reaching across a seat to wrap you in something just like it. I held it close not to wear, but to feel, and without warning, a memory came. Not mine, I think, or maybe something mine once mirrored. I saw a woman sitting on a bus, holding a thermos in one hand, the scarf in the other. She wasn't crying, but she had that kind of stillness that always comes right after, or right before. She looked out the window and whispered something to herself. Maybe a name, maybe nothing at all, and then folded the scarf on her lap with the kind of tenderness people usually reserve for apologies. I blinked, and the vision dissolved. The room was still. The scarf lay quietly in my hands, as if it hadn't moved at all. I didn't try to explain it, didn't need to. Some things don't ask for logic. They ask to be felt. I placed the scarf back exactly as I found it, smoothed the edge with my fingertips. I didn't need to take it. Just touching it had been enough, like a conversation where neither person speaks, but both leave feeling heard. As I turned to go, I noticed a small card by the door that hadn't been there the first time. Simple, handwritten in looping script. Take only what you need. Leave only what is real. I smiled without meaning to. Maybe I'd leave something one day. Not yet, but soon. On the way out, I felt the familiar weight of my thoughts shifting, slower, softer, and somewhere inside me that same quiet voice returned. You don't always have to understand something to let it comfort you. The third time I came, I brought something with me. I didn't know why exactly. It wasn't planned, not in any conscious way. I just slipped it into my coat pocket that morning, like I used to when I carried it everywhere. It was a button, small, round, mother of pearl with a faint crack down the center. It had once belonged to a navy blue Coata gift, years ago, from someone who used to know how to see me. The coat was long gone, lost to time or charity or a moment of needing space. But the button had stayed, first in a drawer, then in a box, then tucked away like a secret too quiet to tell anyone. I didn't take it out right away. I walked into the library like usual, nodded to the woman at the desk, though she never looked up, and made my way to the back. The door was already ajar, the little sign leaning slightly to the left now, like even it had started to relax. Inside, the light was soft again, the kind that settles more than it shines. The shelves were still crowded but never cluttered. Everything had its place, even if it wasn't labeled. I wandered longer that day. My feet took me in slow loops, as if waiting for something in the room to pull me in again. I paused at a row of mismatched mugs, each chipped in a different way. A map with no legend. A raincoat that still smelled faintly of mint and old soap, but nothing called to me like before. The room felt stiller, like it was listening now, not speaking. And that's when I touched the button in my pocket. I'd forgotten it was there almost. My fingers wrapped around it, and a flood of memories rose, unasked for but welcome. Laughter muffled under scarves. A broken umbrella, hands brushing, then holding. The weight of something unsaid between two people walking side by side. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just stood there, heart fuller than I expected. I didn't leave the button. Not yet. I wasn't ready. But I held it in the center of my palm, and for the first time, I let it feel light again. I knelt near one of the shelves, this one holding nothing but paper, postcards, napkins with doodles, a torn page from a piano book, and I just sat. Let the stillness hold me. Let the button rest in the open, just for a few minutes. Not mine, not the room's, just here. That day I didn't touch anything else. I didn't need to. Before I left, I gently whispered, not to the button, not to the room, maybe just to the quiet itself. Some things aren't lost. They're just waiting to be seen again. And with that, I slipped the button back into my pocket. Still with me, but not as heavy. The walk home felt different. Not lighter exactly, just less lonely. I came back after a week, though it felt longer. The world outside had been louder lately, phones, deadlines, broken sleep. I'd almost forgotten what quiet felt like. But the moment I stepped through the library doors, something in my shoulders softened. The stillness greeted me like a hand resting gently on the back of the neck. No pressure, just presence. I moved through the halls without hurry, past the tall shelves, past the desk where the same woman sat, still not noticing me. Or maybe she did, just in her own quiet way. The door to the room was already open again. The air inside was cool, as always, but carried a different tone that day, like a held breath, just before something is spoken. I wandered, not searching, letting the shelves guide me. It's funny how you begin to recognize the rhythm of a place, not by its layout, but by how it makes you feel. Some shelves felt like memory, others like forgetfulness. And then there was the one near the window, the one I rarely approached. That day, I did. There, tucked between a chipped teacup and a stack of bus passes, was a folded napkin. Just a plain white square, slightly wrinkled, but with something scribbled in orange ink. The handwriting was rushed but deliberate, slanted to the right. I almost didn't touch it. It felt intimate, like reading over someone's shoulder in a moment not meant for you. But the room didn't push me away. It never did. I unfolded it slowly. Only one sentence. I didn't know how to stay, but I didn't want to go. That was all. No name, no date. Just that line, suspended on a piece of paper thin enough to tear with a sigh. But something about it held weight, like it had been written mid-exhale. I read it again, then again, and with each pass, It felt less like reading and more like remembering. I didn't know who wrote it. Maybe no one ever would. But those words wrapped around something in me I hadn't realized was still bruised. I sat down near the window, napkin in my hands, and let the light spill across the floor. For the first time in days, I didn't check the time. I didn't scroll through anything or rehearse what I should be feeling. I just let myself be the person who found that sentence, who needed it, and who somehow might have written it in another life. Before I left, I placed the napkin back exactly where I found it. I ran a finger across the curve of the letters. A silent thank you to the invisible someone who once sat with pain and decided to fold it into paper instead of silence. As I walked out, the button in my pocket felt warm again, still there, still mine, but not so alone anymore. And the voice in me steady, gentle, real said quietly, "Someone else has felt this too. You're not the only one." That morning, I wrapped the button in a piece of cloth. Not because it was fragile, but because I wanted to give it the kind of care I never knew it needed. The cloth was an old handkerchief white, soft, with one loose thread curling like a question mark in the corner. I folded it twice, slowly, deliberately. I didn't say goodbye. That felt too final. I just held it a little longer before placing it in my pocket where it had lived for so long and walked to the library with hands tucked deep into my coat. The room was just as it always had been. Still, patient, undemanding. It didn't notice what you brought with you. It didn't ask you to share. But it also never turned you away. That morning, I moved slower than usual. Every shelf felt like a breathing thing. Every object a soft echo. I made my way to the one by the window, the same shelf where I'd found the napkin with orange ink. The napkin was gone now. Or maybe just moved. Maybe taken. That didn't trouble me. I hoped it had found someone else. I stood there a long while with the button in my hand, wrapped and weightless. It didn't ache the way it used to. The memories were still there, of course, still tucked inside it like light behind frosted glass. But they no longer pulled me down. They rested. They breathed. And then, without ceremony, I placed it on the shelf, tucked near a small clay fox with one chipped ear. I didn't need a note. I didn't need anyone to know it had been mine. The room would understand. That was enough. I sat nearby for a while, not to watch, but to be near it a little longer. The air around me felt gentle, like something was being folded inward, like a page being turned softly by wind. I didn't feel loss. I felt continuity, the kind that only comes when something is allowed to stop being just yours. And as I sat there, I whispered not out loud, just inwardly, where real things echo loudest. It's okay to leave a piece of yourself behind if it helps someone else find their way. When I finally stood, I didn't look back. Not out of strength, but trust. The button would be there, waiting for the right hands. And I, for the first time in a long time, walked out feeling like I had space for something new. Outside, the wind was soft. The sky open, and for the first time in years, my coat pocket was empty, and that felt right. The room had always been mine in the the way something can belong to many people and still feel personal. I never expected to be alone forever, not truly. But part of me had come to think of it as a space that opened only for me. That morning, I arrived just after the rain. The streets still glistened, and the air smelled of wet leaves and old pavement. The library's front lamp flickered just once, like it always did when the weather turned. As I passed the front desk, I noticed something strangement wrong, just unfamiliar. A second coat, damp at the hem, draped over the back of a chair. There were no footsteps echoing behind me, no voices, but I felt it then. Someone else was here. When I reached the back and stepped through the open door to the room of left things, I didn't see them at first. The shelves looked unchanged. The soft window light still spilled across the floor like it was waiting to be noticed. But then, by the shelf with the postcards and cracked teacups, I saw them. A person, not old, not young, sitting cross-legged on the floor, holding something carefully in both hands. A locket, I think. Or maybe a watch. Their head was bowed, not in grief, but in stillness. The same kind of stillness I knew too well. That sacred kind. The kind where nothing needs to be fixed, just held. I didn't speak. Neither did they. Our eyes met briefly, just long enough to recognize that we were both part of the same quiet now, not sharing stories, just sharing presence. I nodded. They nodded back. And then we both looked away, like giving each other privacy without moving an inch. Two people in the same room, breathing in the same silence, each with their own reasons. I moved slowly through the room, not to disturb anything, not even the air. And as I passed the shelf where I'd left the button, I saw that it was gone. No note, no sign, just an open space where something used to be. And in its place something new, a folded train ticket. Faded, creased, unreadable, but placed with care. I didn't pick it up. I didn't need to. I just stood there a while longer, letting my eyes rest on the empty spot. My chest didn't ache. It expanded. When I turned to leave, the other visitor was still there, still holding their small object with both hands. But now they were smiling barely, just at the corner of the mouth. And somehow, that was enough. Enough to carry with me for days. Outside, the rain had stopped. The clouds had opened. And the world, for once, didn't feel quite so large or quite so empty. It was late afternoon when I went again. The light had already started turning gold, that soft kind of gold that touches everything as if it's apologizing for leaving. I wasn't sure why I felt pulled back that day. I hadn't planned it. I almost walked past the library entirely, but something quiet, familiar tugged at me. As I stepped through the front doors, I already knew the room would be waiting, and it was. The silence met me like an old friend, and the air felt full, not heavy, not light, just full as if something had been left there recently, still holding its shape. I walked slower than usual, not browsing, not drifting, but listening. And that's when I saw them. A pair of shoes, small, black, polished leather. Not new, but well cared for. Laces tied, soles slightly worn at the heel. They were placed near the doorway, not tucked in, not hidden facing outward, like whoever left them had been ready to go, but changed their mind at the last moment. There was no note, no object beside them, just shoes, waiting, or saying goodbye. I couldn't quite tell. I sat across from them, not too close. I didn't touch them. I didn't need to. Their story lived in the stillness between the scuff marks. Maybe they belonged to someone who walked away from something they thought they'd never survive. Or maybe they were placed there by someone who never got to say what they needed to. The truth didn't matter. What mattered was how my chest tightened, just looking at them, not in pain, in recognition. I thought of how many times I'd almost left something behind but hadn't. How many days I carried objects long past their weight, afraid that letting go would feel too much like loss. But these shoes, they weren't a symbol of loss. They were presence. The echo of someone who had once been sure enough to place them there and walk away barefoot into whatever came next. And in that moment, sitting in that room with shelves full of forgotten and remembered, I realized something I hadn't before. We don't always need to know the story to feel its truth. I stayed there until the light began to fade, painting long shadows across the floor. I whispered a thank you not to anyone specific, just to the air, to the shoes, to the one who had once worn them. When I left, I didn't look back. But in my mind, I could still see them still facing the door, still waiting, or maybe already free. That day, I didn't come with anything to leave, and I didn't expect to take anything with me. I only wanted to sit. The air had shifted again, soft gray, the kind of weather that asks nothing of you except to exist quietly inside it. The library was as still as ever, but the woman at the front desk gave a brief glance as I passed. Just a flicker, not of recognition maybe, but of rhythm, as if she'd seen me enough times to know I belonged to the quiet now. The room behind the desk was nearly empty when I entered. The shelves, the objects, the shoes still by the door, but it felt different. Not lonely, not waiting, just complete. Like a breath, fully exhaled, I wandered slowly, running my hand lightly along a shelf edge. No urgency, no search, just presence. And then I saw it small, almost invisible between an empty teacup and a page torn from a weathered diary. A stone, perfectly smooth, round, river dark, no markings, no note, just a single word carved shallowly into its face. Still, that was it. A word I hadn't known I needed until I saw it. I picked it up, expecting cold, but it was warm in my palm, as if someone had only just placed it there. I stood holding it for a long time, not thinking, just breathing. And in that breath, something landed in me, something finished, but not ended. A feeling like, you made it through. I looked around, almost shyly, as if asking permission from the room itself. No one was there, but the air held me softly, and the shelves said nothing. And yet, I knew it was okay. So, I slipped the stone into my coat pocket, the same pocket where the button used to live. And in that act, I felt no guilt, only stillness, only truth. Before I turned to go, I whispered, "Thank you for holding space for me." And for the first time, I meant it not just for the room, but for myself. For staying, for returning, for releasing. As I stepped outside, the wind brushed against my collar, and I realized something quiet. I hadn't come here looking for peace, but I'd found a place where I'd remembered how to allow it. The stone rested against my leg with the gentle weight of something real, something earned, not through answers, but through staying present. And as I walked down the street, hands in pockets, I whispered to no one in particular, "It's okay. You can carry something small." And I did.